Have you ever felt like something wasn't quite right during your pregnancy, but felt dismissed by doctors and others when you voiced your concerns? In this episode, we speak with Kelli, a mom who went through IVF and had a gut feeling that her daughter wanted to come early. Despite her intuition and shared feelings, she was brushed off by medical professionals and told, "That doesn't happen for first-time moms." Kelli's story highlights the importance of listening to your instincts as a mother and being your own advocate, especially when dealing with a complex birth. You'll hear how Kelli's persistence ultimately led to discovering a surprising reason behind her prolonged and difficult labor, and how a seemingly unrelated medical procedure years earlier almost caused a catastrophic outcome. Join us as Kelli courageously shares the details of her harrowing birth experience to bring greater awareness to placental issues faced by many IVF moms. Her story is a powerful reminder to trust our intuition as mothers and keep asking questions when something doesn't feel right.
Before we dive into today's heartfelt conversations, I'd like to announce this episode is made possible by Baby Tula, a company that believes in something we talk about a lot here, that showcasing each mother's distinct and unique story has the power to inspire other mothers to do things in a way that feels right for them.
If you didn't know, Baby Tula makes these beautiful baby carriers in nearly every color, design, and fabric that you could think of. Intricately hand-woven fabrics, clean linen neutrals, or fun, colorful patterns. If you are looking for something that makes you feel more like you after having a baby, there's Tula.
I've had the pleasure of working with Tula Carrier, and let me tell you, their dedication to supporting mothers aligns perfectly with our mission here. They want mothers to feel empowered, comfortable, and confident in their role. They have a program called The Fringe that selects families across the world who have beautiful stories to share about their parenting journey, from before their little ones were born through the early stages of babyhood and how they grew as a family together. If you want to be inspired by real families who are finding ways to create a new world for their children, visit their site, check out their beautiful carriers, and sign up for their email.
BabyTula.com, where self-love doesn't end at parenthood, it just begins. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's dive into today's inspiring story, the Golden Hour Birth Podcast, a podcast about real birth stories and creating connections through our shared experiences.
Childbirth isn't just about the child. It's about the person who gave birth, their lives, their wisdom, and their empowerment.
We're Liz
and Natalie,
the Golden Hour Birth Podcast, and we're here to laugh with you,
cry with you,
and hold space for you. Welcome to the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. I am your co-host, Liz.
And I'm your co-host, Natalie. And tonight we have Kelli on. Kelli is a mama of one living outside of Denver, Colorado, and owns Soulfire Productions. So thanks so much for coming on tonight, Kelli.
Thank you for having me. It's late. We should all be asleep
yeah.
now.
We're exhausted working moms.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes. So if you want to go ahead and just tell listeners about you and your fam.
Yeah, so we live just outside of Denver, Colorado. My husband, Connor, and I have a daughter named Robbie. She was born in January, so she's 10 months right now. And yeah, we both kind of came from the podcast industry and met through each other's shows and I was in LA and he was in San Diego when we met, and then we moved to Colorado. And yeah, we're here now and growing our family and have a couple dogs and live on a mountain and living the good life.
Oh, that's so good. Love it. So when did you guys kind of start talking about kids, or what did that look like?
Day one. We met,
same.
It's a virtual love story, you guys. So we met over Instagram. I binged his podcast and connected on Instagram, and then we talked for like 6 or 8 weeks before we met in person. And I always tell everyone I fell in love with him before I ever met him, and we just knew there was something different about this connection. And I'm 35, he's 36, and we were like 30 and 31 when this happened. So, we had done the thing. We've dated a lot of people. We had kind of gotten through, and we were like, okay, we're done screwing around. Like, are you the person or not? And so we were just very forthcoming from day one. And so when we met in person on our first date, we had this very cute picnic at the beach at sunset, and, so romantic. And we were sitting on the beach and we just were just mouth diarrhea all over each other, all the things. And it was like, what do you want? What do you want? How do you feel about this? What are your values? And one of the things that we talked about was that he was born without vas deferens. And so he couldn't get someone pregnant naturally. And so we had the fertility treatment conversation on date 1. And although that was not ideal for a lot of reasons, for me, it was just great because I knew, okay, this is what I'm getting into. I get to do a ton of research, look into what this looks like. I knew that I could get pregnant. So I knew that I was good on my end, and I knew that that would help our chances as well going into IVF. And so I just started doing a ton of research from the very beginning. And then when we moved from LA to Colorado, I knew that we had CCRM here, which is, a world-renowned fertility clinic that I really don't like, but their rates are super high. And so we started meeting with doctors immediately and just getting the lay of the land, figuring out what that was going to look like, and just prepping. So when we were ready, we would kind of have everything squared away.
That's so I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
So like I work in a fertility clinic and like they do the TESI or PESA surgery, like where they kind of go in surgically. So that's not an option with the vas deferens. Like I know the vas deferens make the sperm, but there's no other way?
No, as far as I know, that's the only way. Because I thought initially that we would maybe be able to do IUI and just be less invasive. But according to CCRM, they can't get enough sperm to do IUI because of the lack of vas deferens, I guess, or the way the sperm are. And so you have to do IVF. It's really your only option.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I have like to go do research now too. I'm like, whoa.
If you want to come back and tell me something different so that I can not do that for baby number 2, I'm very here for it. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure that's what we have to do.
Yeah. No, I totally probably agree. I'm just like, I didn't know about this, so I'm just interested now. And we can cut this out or whatever. I'm just like, what? Huh. So my mind is spinning that way. So yeah. So once did you guys just go through the one round of IVF and then?
Yeah, we were super lucky. So we went through our retrieval. We got the sperm, we got the eggs. We were super lucky. We ended up with 5 embryos.
Oh.
And so we did our first round in April of last year and got pregnant immediately, which was so great.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was, like I said, I think for us, it was better because I knew that I could get pregnant and it wasn't a female fertility issue, which obviously, I hate that for anyone. And oftentimes it's the man. I mean, you work in a fertility clinic. How many times is it the guy that comes in that's actually having some of the issues?
Yeah.
So I learned a lot in that experience, but for us, it was pretty seamless and I was really grateful.
That's good. That's awesome. So what was pregnancy like?
Oh, not my favorite experience of all time. I think, so I had the worst time doing IVF. Like, I was suicidal. I was super disconnected from my body. The hormonal swings for me were really, really intense. Yeah. I'm just very sensitive. I haven't been on birth control since I was 27. I'm very connected to my body. I'm very holistic. And so, I'm just really self-aware. And so I think that I just had a lot harder of a time. And so you have to stay on IVF medication until you're 10 weeks pregnant to make sure that your body holds pregnancy. And so it's the pregnancy hormones plus IVF hormones. And that was just so much for me. And so, there were days where I just felt like I was not a functioning part of society and was just sleeping and just having a really hard time. And then once I got, deeper into the second trimester and into the third, a lot of the hormones kind of leveled out. But I was uncomfortable and I just felt like my body struggled in a lot of ways. I was in pain. I had a lot of round ligament pain. There were just a lot of things going on. And then once we got towards the end of pregnancy, I ended up being in labor for 6 weeks. And we found out later what was going on, but during that time, we really didn't know. And so I was going into the hospital and trying to find out if there was something wrong or if I was in, preterm labor, and they just kept saying everything was good. And I had planned an unmedicated home birth in a tub with a midwife and a doula. And, we were going the whole thing. And so there was just a lot of back and forth, and I would be in labor for 4 and 5 hours a day, having contractions every 1.5 to 2 minutes, like, okay. And then it would just stop.
Yeah.
And we were like, what is going on? And that just kept going on. And so we finally induced. Do you want me to go into that, or do you want to ask me questions before
I have one question.
Yeah.
During your pregnancy and going through that hard time, did you do anything to like manage your mental state?
I did everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so lucky. I'm very resourced.
Yeah.
And I was resourced before I got pregnant. And I did that on purpose for a lot of reasons. And I always tell everyone, like, I'm so glad that I had practitioners and support. And I've been in therapy for a lot of my life. And I know how to ask for help. Because if I hadn't, I don't know how people do this alone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how people do this without help.
Yeah.
Like, I was so out of my mind, so disconnected. There were moments where I have a really amazing group of friends. There's 5 of us, and we talk all the time on Zoom and really connected. We know each other so well. And I remember I'm in my office right now, and I was in the couch to my left, and I was in the fetal position on the phone with my friend. Like, I don't want to be with Connor. I hate this. Like, why am I even doing this? I don't even want to have a kid. I'm not even attracted to him. My hormones were so all over the place. And they were telling me step by step, this is why you love your husband. This is why you're having kids. And I was in therapy, and I was getting acupuncture, and I was doing, prenatal massage, and my eating is incredible. And, I was very well nourished and taken care of. And so, yeah, I'm really glad that I knew how to ask for help. And with all of that, it was still so hard.
Wow. Yeah. I really don't know how people go through it alone either. I mean, those hormones and the medication, it's hard.
Yeah. And it's like, look, some of us have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And the rates of people having to do for any type of fertility treatment are increasing. And sometimes I feel bad, like maybe I shouldn't tell this story because I feel like a lot of it is very negative. But I also didn't hear any honest experiences like this before I went through it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like I got hit by a freaking truck, when maybe if I had heard a story like mine that was, hey, this is going to be hard. Make sure you're resourced. Make sure you talk to your partner before. Make sure you guys are in a really good place. Make sure you know how to ask for help. I went to my fertility clinic to my doctor and said, this was when we were doing the retrieval. And I said, I think I was on Lupron, which basically sends you into menopause. And I was like, hey, this is making me feel suicidal. Like, I am unwell. This is not okay. And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, you're too far into the treatment and we can't do anything for you. She didn't say, hey, are you in therapy? Hey, have you gone to acupuncture? Hey, like, maybe let's have a conversation. This isn't okay. It was like, oh, sorry. And I remember leaving there like, what the fuck just happened? How do you know if I have help or support or not? And so I just started thinking about all the people that go in there who don't have that support.
Yeah.
Who don't have a partner like mine who's amazing and connected and can, hold space for me when I'm losing my shit.
Yeah.
And it really upset me. And I feel like that's just sort of the medical industry as a whole. And so I think that if we can have honest conversations like this and say, yeah, this is not going to be fun. Like, no one wants to go through IVF. It sucks. And here are different ways you can support yourself and be honest and know that you're not crazy. Mm-hmm. It's okay. And this isn't forever. Mm-hmm. And hopefully you get a baby at the end and you look at them and you're like, I guess I'll do it again. You're so freaking cute. Yeah. Like, let's do it again.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned all that because we are both in doula training. And the program that we chose has a very comprehensive fertility support. Mm-hmm. So you can either focus on fertility doula, birth doula, or postpartum, or all three. Cool. So it's a really good program.
Yeah.
So hopefully it will help some people.
I know.
Yeah.
You
I've
know?
never
Well, it
been
takes
more
women like
aware.
you who are good at holding space, who help women and partners feel safe, and who are educated so that anything that's thrown your way, at your client's way, you guys are resourced, you know? And I think that most people just don't feel safe and they don't feel like they have a place to go to say like, hey, I'm like losing it. Am I okay?
Yeah.
You know? And so I think the work that you're doing is really, really important.
Yeah. Thank you. I never knew about like a fertility doula, and then seeing the program that I'm in and being like, oh, wow, like there's fertility doulas out there. Like that is amazing because I'm seeing it from both sides. And I'm like, you're right. Like there needs to be more support while you're in it. And I like my heart hurts for like the people who feel like they need to hide it, that like they're in fertility treatments or things like that. You know, like there's like the shame around it, but I just like that sucks, you know, because people are asking you like, when are you going to have a baby? And then you can't tell them, you know, there's like just, there's no good
and
way.
then what if it doesn't work?
Yeah.
And you go through all these rounds and, you know, there's just so much stigma and shame around if you can't have a baby, like naturally without support of medicine. And I just feel like we have to do a better job of not shaming people and not making people feel like they failed, because I don't know about you guys, but I don't feel like I did something wrong to have to do IVF.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's also part of the shame I think my husband feels, that I don't have to do IVF. I could get pregnant naturally if it was with someone else. And so then he's carrying that and he's watching me suffer and he's like, this is my fault. And he didn't do anything. It's not like he cut his vas deferens out of his own freaking body or like, you know, did drugs to a point where something happened and well, that was a dumb decision. Like he was just born like that.
Yeah.
And I think that we just need to have more honest conversations so that people realize there's nothing wrong with you. Like you're not bad. You're not broken. You didn't do anything wrong. This is just a part of some of our journeys, and it's harder for some than others. I have a friend who has been trying to get pregnant for 1.5 years now. We were just at coffee the other day and she was like, I know this sounds bad, but I swear to God, if this girl gets pregnant before me, I'm going to lose my shit. And she ended up getting pregnant before her, and she got pregnant really easily, and it was like an oopsie, you know? And so then someone who's going through fertility treatments is like, shit, like what did I do wrong to deserve this, you know? And so there's just this constant narrative within us that there's something wrong with us, and then we compare ourselves because we all have comparisonitis because we're stuck on Instagram 24/7. It feels like everyone's getting pregnant every 7 seconds and we're not, and there's something wrong. And you know, it's just, you can't win. And so I think we just need to be supportive of ourselves, supportive of those around us, and know that everyone is on their own path, and that's okay.
Yep. I like that. Everyone's on their own path and their own journey. Yeah. So kind of going back into being on and off in labor for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Did that start around like 34 weeks or?
Yeah, it was like between 34 and 35 weeks, I think. And I don't know what the law is for you guys, but in Colorado, we have to be at 37 weeks to do a home birth. And so that's all I cared about. I was just like, you know, I don't want to have a baby in a hospital. I got to get to 37 weeks. And so it was Thanksgiving, and I was like in the kitchen making potatoes, and I start feeling contractions. Like, okay, that's weird. That's not going to happen again. And then they just kept going. And then it just went on from there. And it was weird because the midwife and the doula were both just like, what is going on? And the doula had a lot of red flags. And I feel like the midwife just kind of, I'm frustrated looking back at her lack of knowledge and like looking into what was going on, because she just never had an answer for anything I went through my entire pregnancy. And I was like, maybe ask somebody, or don't know. Because everyone I've talked to since then, every midwife I've talked to is like, oh yeah, I would have looked for this thing and I would have asked you these questions on this intake form. Like, why didn't you have this conversation? I'm like, I don't know. So I felt very alone and I felt kind of crazy. And at one point I remember it was the day we ended up inducing. It was New Year's Day and I did the castor oil induction at home. And Connor and I got in the biggest fight that day. It was like I took the castor oil and then he decided to tell me I was losing my mind because he was losing his mind. He's like, you've been in labor for 6 weeks. Like, no one's in labor for 6 weeks. You're crazy. And he was like, I feel like you're making this up. No one is in labor for 6 weeks. And I'm on the floor screaming and crying. I'm losing my mind. I haven't slept in 6 weeks. I'm in labor all the time. I'm having a baby. I'm like, what is going on? And you know, it just like, it got really hard and I just felt like I'm losing it. Like, maybe I am making this up. Maybe, am I pregnant? Like, are we sure? Like, I started thinking about all the most irrational things because it was like, it was crazy making. It didn't make any sense. So yeah, it was pretty funny.
So like while you were in labor, like you were having actual contractions, you were counting them, you were...
Oh yeah, I was timing. I'm on the phone with the doula. I'm like, hold on, here comes another one. She's like packing her bag, talking me through it. And she's like, okay, call the midwife. And that happened like 4 times where it got like intense enough where we were like calling the team and then it would just stop. And I'd be like, never mind, guys. Just kidding.
And you
so
would
the
just
day
like...
that we induced,
oh my God,
the whole team ended up coming because my water broke and I was like really in labor. And I was in the tub. I labored for, I don't know, 6 or 7 hours in our living room. And then that shit just stopped again. And we were like, okay. And the whole team was like, you know what? This is different. This has gone on longer. It's been more intense. Your water broke. Maybe your body just needs a break and wants you to sleep and we'll pick it back up in the morning. So we all went to bed at like 3 a.m. And I continued to have like random contractions, but nothing intense. And then it stalled out until Tuesday afternoon. And the midwife was like, you need to go to the hospital. Your water broke 2 days ago. I'm now concerned. And I was like, yeah, and I'm concerned because you don't seem to know what's going on. And I don't really feel confident with you delivering my child. And so we ended up going to the hospital and they were like, yeah, you have no fluid left. You need to induce. Like, you need to come today. And so I came home and we packed up and I just wrapped my mind around the fact that this was not going to go the way I wanted and that there was a reason it was happening. And so we went into the hospital that night. And luckily, Denver Health here is a midwife hospital. And so I got to have the most amazing experience. All the midwives were so fantastic. I never saw a doctor until after my daughter was born. And all of the nurses, like, more than half of them were doulas. So they were just so on board with the home birth and what I wanted. And they turned off all the monitors and the sounds. And we had our candles and our crystals and the music. And they were like, this is the best room ever. And I'm like, and so that part of it, I was super grateful for. But yeah, we went in that night. We induced that night. Nothing happened. I ended up going into really severe back labor. She was sunny side up. And so I ended up having to get an epidural. I hadn't slept in like a week. I couldn't stand. My whole body was shaking. I was like, I just like couldn't do anything. And I was like in such severe pain. And the midwife was just, you know, talking to my husband and I, and she's like, I'm really concerned for you because you're so far beyond the pain threshold. I feel like this is going to be more traumatic for you if you don't do this. And I'm really grateful that she was there to support me in making that decision because I was just so anti-epidural, anti-everything. And so I got the epidural and still nothing was happening. And we're just like, what is going on? I've been 4 centimeters dilated for 6 weeks. I've been in labor for 6 weeks. My water broke 2-3 days ago and nothing happening. And they go in and they're like, you're only 0.5 centimeter dilated. And I said, that's a lie. You're lying. They were like, no, we are not. And I looked at the doula and I was like, did our midwife not know how to do cervical checks? Like, I was like, what is happening? And so we're just all sitting there totally stumped. And I go through 3 midwives and they finally bring in this other midwife because, they are doing shift changes every 12 hours. And this woman comes in and she goes, I'm going to check you. And so she's got her fingers inside of me. She's doing the cervical check. And she goes, did you have a LEEP procedure? And I said, yeah, like 10 years ago. And she goes, you have a ton of scar tissue and it's keeping you from dilating. I'm going to swipe it with my finger and you are going to dilate immediately. I'm like, okay. So she does it immediately, 5 centimeters. I go, Kate, can you explain to me why I thought I was 4 centimeters and then you guys told me I was half a centimeter and now I'm 5 centimeters? She goes, because there's 2 sides basically of your cervix that you can check. Your midwife was feeling the side that was open. The other side was closed though. And the other side couldn't open because the scar tissue was holding it closed. She's like, so now all of it's open. Like you're fully open. Open for business.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, okay. So they flip my daughter. I'm 5 centimeters dilated. Everything's moving. And I go into labor a couple hours later. I push for an hour and a half. I'm able to push. I get on all 4s. I'm moving. It's lovely as it can be on an epidural. It hurts like hell. And also I was like, okay, I can do this. Give birth. And everything was great. And she was perfect. And my husband was able to catch her. It was a vaginal delivery, like all the things. And they were like, this is why you were in labor for 6 weeks, because you had the scar tissue and she was basically stuck. She did want to come 6 weeks ago. She was ready and your body wouldn't let her.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Isn't that nuts?
Yeah. And none of the other midwives, like,
They
so
had
like
never
the fourth
seen it
one, she
before.
just was able to feel the scar tissue and was like,
she had patients with that procedure before. She knew to look for the scar tissue and she knew because she had heard like, oh, this girl's been in labor a lot. And she was like, I bet that she has this thing that's keeping her from fully dilating. Yeah.
And the LEEP procedure is something.
It's for HPV.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's actually very common.
Yeah.
The more research I've done, I was actually on a podcast. I can't remember what it's called, but it's hosted by a midwife a couple weeks ago. And I was talking to her about it and she did like a ton of research. She actually went into a midwives group with like 6,000 midwives and shared my story and asked for other people to talk about it. This is rampant, you guys. I'm 36. I don't know how old you are. You look kind of like my age.
Uh-huh.
Our generation has gotten so many LEEP procedures because HPV is so common. That there are so many women that are getting unnecessary C-sections because they're not fully dilating and no one knows to look for the scar tissue. So they're just literally giving people C-sections.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's insane.
Mind is blown.
Yeah. Yeah. So
That's
first of all, don't get a
incredible.
LEEP procedure if you have HPV. It usually clears on its own. No one needs this freaking procedure. And also, if you've had it, make sure your whole team knows because it's a very easy fix. All you have to do is swipe the scar tissue.
Yeah.
But if people don't know to look for it, and oftentimes people don't even know to ask if you've had one because they don't, it's like birth control. We didn't know the repercussions until now. And we're like, oh God.
Mhm.
It's the same thing. So make sure your whole team knows, make sure they understand what to do so that you don't have that situation.
Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh.
So your daughter was ready to come at 34 weeks.
Sounds like it. Or at least close.
Yeah.
Like maybe I wasn't ready to like give birth at that time, but my body was like definitely warming up.
Yeah. Whoa. So then the scar tissue would kind of just like stop the contractions as well, like stop labor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
I remember the midwife said to me, does it feel like you're hitting a wall? And I said, that is literally what I have been telling everyone for the last 6 weeks. I said, I am in labor, I'm having contractions, and then it always feels like I hit a wall. She's like, that's what's happening. It's like your body's trying to open and then it stops because it's being held closed.
Yeah.
I can't
Oh, God.
I was just saying, I can't believe how quickly you birthed her after that.
I
After
know.
6 weeks.
And how you were just like 5, like.
I know. Within
Wild.
seconds, I'm not kidding. We were like, I was like, am I in the Twilight Zone? Like, what is happening?
Yeah. Yeah, that feels like it. So did your, kind of like the baby kind of like starts getting preparing too? Like, do you feel like Robbie was preparing and then like she would kind of hit the wall as well? I don't.
Yeah, I mean, she was fully grown, and I mean, if you saw pictures, and I could send you one of my vagina of her coming out, she has a full head of hair. She's
I know.
almost 23 inches. She's an advanced kid. I feel like she was like overcooked in there and was like, I'm
Yeah.
good. Let me out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she,
And I kept telling, this is the other thing. And this is my bone to pick with people and pregnant women and mothers that don't listen to us. I told everyone she was trying to come early, and every fucking person I talked to was like, you're a first-time mom. That doesn't happen. And I was like, I am telling you, my daughter, I didn't know it was a girl, my kid wants to come out. They are ready. My body is ready. Like, what is happening? They're like, no, that will never happen. So it was so validating for me to be in there and the midwife be like, yeah, she definitely wanted to come out. Like, everything was ready to go and your body just couldn't let it happen. And I just wish that people would listen, because my intuition was so freaking spot on and I didn't even know what was going on. But I knew that something was off. And I just felt like no one was listening to me, and they made me feel stupid. They made me feel disconnected from my body and my intuition. And it was so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
And who cares? Even if she wasn't going to come early, I just feel like there needs to be more validation for how women feel in their bodies and what they're feeling and feel like is, being intuitively guided within them. I don't know. That was really hard for me to grapple with for a while.
Yeah. I completely understand. I mean, like, I finally feel like I like have that mother's intuition now, and it took 2 kids because we were at a doula event the other night, and like with all midwives and our birthing center like in St. Louis, and a woman comes in and she's like 20 weeks pregnant. She's like, I really want to change to the birthing center. I just feel like something's giving me vibes like that my OB just like might not be the right person for me. And I'm like, you already have your intuition, like stick with it and don't ever question it. I love that for you. So I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's real.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I gave birth. The story's not over, guys. So I gave birth. She was great. Everything seemed fine. And then they were trying to get me to birth the placenta. And it wasn't coming out. And they were like, let's just give it a minute. It'll be fine. And I'm just sitting there like blissed out. I just had a baby. And all of a sudden she's like, will you push again? And so I push a little bit. She's like, nothing's happening. And then like 1 minute passes. And then there was this ginormous gush. And I was like, oh, cool. The placenta came out. And I just hear her start yelling. And I was losing so much fluid and blood. Like it was like gushing out of me. And the placenta still wasn't coming out. So that's when they realized that I had placenta accreta and it was basically adhered to my body. And so doctors just start running the room and I start fading. And I'm just like, I feel myself pulling back and I can't open my eyes. And I start getting really thirsty and I just keep being like, water. And I didn't know what was going on. And all of a sudden, I can't really feel much because I had the epidural. This doctor comes in and my husband said she was like elbow deep inside of me, yanking my placenta out. He was like, there were shreds of you just like coming out. He was like, it was insane. And the fluids just kept coming. And so they were calling our room number and, emergency coming in. And they came in and they looked at my husband and they were like, we might have to perform a hysterectomy. We need your okay for this to save her life. And he was like, what? He's like, they were like, we need your okay. And he's like, okay. and he brings Ro to me and I kiss her goodbye and they wheel me off immediately to surgery. And they had to perform a DNC and put a balloon in and gauze. And I had a 3-bag blood transfusion. And I had a near-death experience on the operating table.
Oh my
God. It was
God.
freaking crazy. Yeah. And then it was over in 20 minutes and I was in recovery and everything was done.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I remember everything.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I remember the near-death experience for me was I felt myself like really leaving and I was like, oh, I can go now. Okay, great. And I realized that I had a choice. I was like, I think I'm good. I think I'm like ready to go. And then all of a sudden, I remember we had just redone our will because I wanted to have it done before she was born. And I was like, oh, it'll be fine. Like Ro and Connor are taken care of. I just redid the will. Like it'll be good. And then I saw him and I saw her, like vision of them. And I was like, no, I want to be alive. I want to be alive. I want to be. And I have chills right now saying it. I just kept repeating it in my head over and over and over again. And then I felt myself like come back into my body. And then they were wheeling me into recovery right after that.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah. It was so nuts to like have a choice.
Yeah.
Be like, do I want to be here? And for me, I had a lot of issues with, feeling suicidal when I was young, starting in 7th grade. And so life had always been really hard for me. And I never felt like I really wanted to be here. And it was so interesting in that moment. And of course, like right after giving birth, I become a mother. And that's when I get to choose, like, do you want to be here or not?
Aww.
And I was like, yeah, no, I got to be here.
Yeah. Aww. It was all for her.
It was all for her.
Aww.
Yeah. So it was nuts. It was nuts.
I didn't get this far in your story.
Oh.
On your podcast. Because that, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is that I've learned in my research since this happened is that a lot of IVF moms have placental issues and placenta accreta. So the maternal mortality rates are pretty high. Not like 75% of IVF moms, but high as in probably, 5 to 10%. I don't know.
Yeah.
But people are not talking about it. It's midwives and nurses that are basically word of mouth sharing this and their experiences. And they're just seeing like so many IVF moms have these placental issues. And Ro was just in the hospital in August. She had a cancerous tumor in her stomach the size of a grapefruit and had to have it removed. And our oncologist said that it could be from IVF.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So IVF is screwing with nature. And so they're seeing a lot of abnormalities with placentas and in children because there's just something off when you start messing with it that causes these issues.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know there's like 3 different kind of like levels of accreta. But I can't like think of the exact words. Like, was yours like level 3?
I don't know. Honestly, I didn't even know what placenta accreta was until like 2 months ago. All they said was like basically your placenta was stuck to your body, and they said this could have happened because the baby was like in the canal for so long and she basically like pushed it against your body, which maybe, but when I started doing research, it just was like so common with IVF moms. So yeah, I don't know what degree it was. I mean, maybe the hospital knows. But I know that I'm very high risk. It's very likely to happen again. It could potentially be much worse the second time. So we're kind of in the stages of, 1, do we want to have another kid? Because if it's that risky, I don't want to die, obviously. And 2, if we do it, what does our support system look like? So I would go back to the same hospital because they clearly know what they're doing and handled everything so amazingly. Yeah. I feel very safe there, but I think I would basically say like, you have to have transfusion ready, emergency ready. Like if anything were to happen, the whole team is there and prepared, because it sounds like a lot of moms who do end up either Like, I know a mom here, she's the one that told me about placenta accreta and just all the different specialists. She was in a coma for 10 days. They were like, yeah, she's not going to make it. And she ended up making it. Her daughter's 14 now. But it sounds like the moms who go into comas, don't make it, or have just like really severe, 10-bag transfusion, like crazy stuff. People just aren't prepared. And so if you have a team that's prepared and they know to look for it, then you're obviously in a much better situation. So kind of where we are is just, we're like in dialogue currently of what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. Because oftentimes they don't know about the accreta until it's time. And you only have like 1 to 2 minutes to save the mom,
Yeah. We just had a accreta mom on sharing her story, but they found it really early, and like the hospital that she goes to, like the doctor is like, that's his specialty. It was kind of beautiful, but also really scary.
Yeah. Hers was really severe. It was in her
Bladder.
It had grown into her bladder.
See, yeah, I don't know how all that works.
Yeah.
I'm going to listen to that episode. I'm really curious to hear her story.
Yeah. That one was wild. I have a question. So I know that you said like your water broke and then you like went to the hospital and like they said that you didn't really have any fluid. Like, was anyone worried about that part, or like, was it kind of okay?
Yeah, so everything looked fine. Her heartbeat was fine. My heartbeat was fine. They didn't feel like we were at immediate risk for infection. They were like, yeah, it's been 48 hours. Like, that's not ideal. You don't have fluid left, but she seems fine, or the baby seems totally fine, and you're good. So they said, we're not in a rush, but you do need to come in today. And I was like, okay. So
that's good.
Yeah, I feel like here they would have just been like, C-section.
Yeah.
Right away. So your hospital sounds a little more on the holistic side. So
I've heard that quite a bit. They're like, I can't believe you had a vaginal birth. And I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, that is a C-section almost everywhere.
Yeah. That's how I was feeling. Like the no fluid, the being in labor for so long, the like failure to progress, like is what you think that was going on. That's like everything was coming up in my mind was like a C-section. But I mean, I'm so happy that you got your vaginal birth.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is I didn't need a C-section.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you guys know the rates of C-section are skyrocketing. And I don't think that we're looking at enough of what's going on in women's bodies to say, is this actually necessary?
Yeah.
Like emergency C-sections exist for a reason. I'm totally here for it. I'm not like anti-do them. I just think that like I obviously didn't need one. Many women in my case are going to have it. Many women with a LEEP procedure and scar tissue are going to have it. And I just wish we were asking more questions and doing better intake so that we understood where people are. And then these conversations are so important. Like, who knows who's listening to this, who might have a mom who they're going to give a C-section to, and she's like, wait, she had a LEEP procedure, check for scar tissue. And then it's totally avoidable.
Yeah.
But it's not like Western medicine is not throwing millions of dollars to test and like do research on this stuff. So it relies on people like us having these conversations, which is why I feel open to talking about this. Though I might scare people, this is the only way we can share this information at this point.
Yeah. Which you've really brought like a lot of important conversations up in this podcast. And I'm really thankful for that, because I feel like we know that C-section rates are skyrocketing. If you watch The Business of Being Born, they're done during the hours of 4 p.m. and 10 p.m. so doctors can get home to their families. They're not done on Christmas or 4th of July. Like, we know. And this is not trying to like, just, C-sections are there for a reason, but there's other options, other ways too.
So, okay, you go to recovery. After all this, your near-death experience, what happens after that?
I mean, I was elated. I was like, my baby is so cute. I'm alive. I hadn't processed, obviously. I was in shock. I was in shock for a few weeks. And like I said, my body's really sensitive. So the epidural like really took a toll on me. I didn't feel like I was here, like physically here, fully landed. And maybe that's because I had a near-death experience. And so it took a while for like my soul to come back into my body. I don't know. But even the first night we came home, we stayed in the hospital for 2 nights after. And then the first night we came home, I didn't even know, I wasn't with my child that night. Connor took Ro and slept with her on the couch so that I could sleep. And I didn't know that until a couple months ago. He was like, yeah, that first night with Ro was so special for me. And I was like, oh yeah. He's like, yeah, it was just the 2 of us. I was like, excuse me. He's like, you don't remember? And I said, what are you talking about? I slept with Ro. We co-slept for 4 months. And he's like, babe, yes. And the first night I took her and we slept on the couch because you needed to sleep because you hadn't slept in so long.
Yeah.
And you had just gone through like something really horrible. So I wanted you to sleep. I didn't even know that. So I think I was, I wasn't here.
Yeah.
And then I had 9 stitches and the trauma from the placenta and things being shredded out. It was pretty brutal on my body. And so, yeah, my recovery was pretty rough. Thank God my husband's mom called my brother when I was going into surgery and was like, hey, you need to get here. She might not make it. And so my brother and his wife got on a plane that night and they were in the hospital at 7:30 a.m. the next morning. I mean, I gave birth at 9:30 p.m. and they were in the hospital at 7:30 a.m. the next day. And then they stayed with us for a week. My husband's mom was there for a week. So we had a lot of support. I barely had to get I also had the most amazing doula and she did a ton of like postpartum cooking and checking on us. And we have all the best friends and family. So that was amazing. And I'm so glad that I had support and we already had a ton of meals cooked. And I tried to, do first 40 days in a lot of ways, just to be nourished and stay warm and all of that. But yeah, I was waddling and bleeding a lot and my husband was changing me and, it was pretty bad. And then I ended up getting really constipated. Here's another little nugget of information for you guys. Lactation balls are not that great. They can cause horrific constipation.
Oh no.
The oats and the yeast are known to make you extremely constipated, which I did not know, and they actually don't really help lactation. I talked to my lactation consultant about this. If you want to follow her, she's Milk Masters on Instagram. She's the smartest woman I've ever met. Anyways, so I was doing these lactation balls like, crazy. I ended up getting really constipated and I was so constipated one day. I pushed so hard. I think I already had the prolapse, but I made the prolapse so bad. And then I ended up in the emergency room a couple days later. I was in so much pain. I had, what is it called when the stool is like stuck?
Impacted.
Yeah, I had like impact. So basically like I had a bunch of poop stuck in my stomach. I couldn't poop. I was extremely constipated and I had a prolapse. And so I was feeling tissue come out of my vagina. And I was just in extreme pain. And so that made the healing so much worse. And I'm still dealing with the healing from the prolapse. But yeah, it was really brutal. So there's just like a lot of things compounding literally and figuratively on top of each other. And at the same time, I got back into movement pretty quickly. I love working out. I worked out my whole pregnancy. I've been an athlete my whole life. And so I was in the gym, 3 or 4 weeks postpartum, just like stretching and moving. And that felt really good for me. And just making sure, my nutrition was good. And I was in a really good place. Ro was actually sleeping really well. I think co-sleeping went really well for us until she hit her 4-month sleep regression. And then she basically was up every 1 to 2 hours until 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
yeah. She slept 11 hours 2 nights ago. And I was like,
praise.
I was very scared. I thought something bad happened.
Yeah. When you wake up in a
Why
panic.
are you still asleep? I'm like looking on the monitor.
Yeah.
Like a crazy person. But yeah. And so that after 4 months, like 4 to 7 months, I had really bad postpartum depression, really bad anxiety. really horrible, terrible thoughts. And yeah, that was a really scary time. And it was really amazing. Again, my husband is so wonderful. It was a couple days where I was being a total psycho bitch, and I was like screaming at him and just being really irrational and kind of out of control. And it's just not how we are. And at first he was like, the fuck? Like, why are you being like this? And, you know, kind of yelling back at me. And it was a whole thing. And then he came to me one afternoon. He's like, hey, this feels a lot like IVF. And I was, does. And I realized like my hormones were just so out of whack, and I was so tired that it was just crushing me. And so I immediately reached out to our birth coach, Emily Stanwyck, and I was like, hey, this is what's going on. I'm not okay. And so we talked through everything, and she was super supportive. And I just started sharing with other people what I was dealing with. And it was super validating because so many moms obviously deal with that. Mm-hmm. And it just really helped for me to realize that I wasn't crazy, and that I was going through obviously exhaustion and then a huge hormone swing and shift and all of that. And so I came out of that around 7.5 months, and I've been pretty stable since then. I do have a hard time. I had got my period back at around 4 or 5 months as well. And I do notice that around my period, I do feel those like intense hormone swings more than normal. But other than that, I feel pretty stable, and I'm sleeping more now. So that's been really helpful.
That's good. Sleep will give you a good mind fuck for sure. Yeah. And you didn't even sleep at all during your like tail end of your pregnancy.
Exactly.
Like I am so surprised. I don't know. Wow. I don't think I could have functioned or like lived, and like, look at you.
Thanks.
We actually just interviewed a mom who, she has a support group for moms in that 4 to 6 month period. Because she said, you know, it's just your hormones are just all over the place. And that's the time where people kind of stop checking in on you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's interesting that all happened at that 4-month mark.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important to just be okay with asking for help. We have really good friends. Their baby, he was born and he was blue and not moving, and ended up in the NICU for 10 days. And now he's on oxygen. He's home. He's doing great. And he's not sleeping. And it's just been a really, really hard month for them. And I keep reaching out to her, and I'm like, ask for help. Tell me if you want me to come over and hold the baby while you sleep. I will come over and clean while you hold the baby. Just ask for help. I said, it will make you crazy, and you are not crazy. And you need to be okay sending out your SOS signal to all your people and be like, you guys need to show the fuck up right now. This is not okay. And I don't think that we're good enough at doing that, of being like, yo guys, all hands on deck. I'm not well. Like, I'm not well. And it's not just around pregnancy. I think it's just women in general. We're not good at asking for help. We're not good at saying like, this is not okay. I need you to physically be here, get on a plane, fly here, show up at my house, and take care of me, because I'm not okay. And I've just realized like that is the most profound thing that you could do for someone, is to show up for them and to basically like barge into their house and be like, no, I'm here. And I wish that more people had that and felt that, because I think we'd all have a lot better time healing and feeling supported and feeling whole, and not going down these, you know, paths that make us just feel wrong and bad and crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like our generation is definitely like getting better at asking for help and just talking about all these things. So it's going to be really interesting about like Gen Z and Gen A, like, hopefully they will be able to like, talk about their feelings better.
Talk in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. It's so scary.
Yeah, I had a really hard time. I feel like a lot of people didn't really show up for me on baby number 2. And I was just talking to Liz about this. Like, there were very minimal people who actually showed up for me on baby number 2. It's like the excitement just isn't there the second round. And I wasn't okay. And I felt like I was just screaming into like some blank ears sometimes. So, yep. I love your attitude about that. Keep doing that. Make sure you have that for baby number 2 too, if you decide to go that way. But yeah, I feel like that's overlooked.
Yeah. And isn't it crazy? Because from what I hear, going from 1 to 2 is insane. Yeah. So you would think that more people would show up when there's more tiny humans to take care of.
I know. It didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I have to like kind of process this after we get off too. I don't know. But thank you so much for sharing a lot of that. Do you how are you feeling now, 10 months postpartum? And
yeah, I feel like I really started to feel like myself again around 9.5 months. So pretty recently. And I run my own company. I have 13 people on my team. I have a lot of responsibility. I'm the breadwinner of our family. And I think that, I didn't take enough time off maternity leave. I basically went back to work after 6 weeks. And I swear to God, I will never do that again. I'm saying 4 months on the next one.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I learned a lot, but I'm really feeling like myself. I feel like really good in my body. I'm still dealing with the prolapse. I just started this amazing new pelvic floor program. I've come a long way, and I still feel the tissue and want to do a lot more strengthening before I get pregnant again. But I feel physically so strong and so clear. And I feel like one of my superpowers now is regulating my nervous system. And it feels really nice because I was never good at that. And I feel like my daughter has been such a catalyst in me really owning how powerful I am and the abilities I have to navigate hard things and to make sure that I take care of myself, because that's a direct reflection of how I'm taking care of her, and how I can show up for her. And I mean, you guys know this, like when you have kids, it becomes your why for everything you do. And there's so much more on the line. And so I feel like she's really called me forward in being the best version of myself and owning my power and being unafraid to go after things and dream big. And it feels really good. And I know that I'm in my purpose as a mother. And so it's really cool to be able to continue living my life and building this company and going after my dreams and doing things that really matter to me and really connecting deeply with my husband and, continuing to grow our relationship while also being really present for her and present in my body. So things feel really, really good now. And that's really exciting.
That's awesome. That's I can see the glow in your face. So,
sorry. What kind of things do you do for your mental health? You talked a little bit about regulating your, nervous system. Like, tell me more.
Yeah. I feel like meditation and breath work has been really important for me. And also I just really try and pause a lot. I have been a very anxious person, very controlling and perfectionist. And so those tendencies, when you're really tired, come back, and they come back really strong. And so, I think that one of the best things that I've learned to do is when I feel like a reaction that feels really emotional or just kind of irrational, I try and pause and be like, what's going on right now before I respond. And that's really helped me sort of notice like, okay, what do I need in this moment? Because that's a very irrational response to this thing. And so what do I actually need? And so then I'm able to check in with myself and realize, oh, I have not had alone time in 3 days. I need to go and take an hour for myself and go for a walk or work out or take a bath, or call my girlfriends and just catch up. I need to do things for me. And so I think that's been really, really helpful. And then also asking for help and allowing my husband to be the parent and take care of our daughter and show up. Like, he was so incredible, and he still does this from time to time when I need it. But in the beginning, one of the best pieces of advice we got was that he takes the baby in the morning for 2 hours while I get really good restful sleep. And that was huge for me. It was usually the best sleep that I was going to get, and I was uninterrupted. And then I would come out and he would have breakfast ready for me, and it was incredible. And so I think continuing to allow him to show up for me as much as possible in that way, whether it was cleaning or cooking or going to the grocery store, like he knows that I need help and I can't do everything anymore because I have to worry about a little person who can't be carted around all the time. And like even tomorrow, I'm going to Pilates at 7 a.m. So he's going to have row for 2 hours in the morning. He's like, I'm so happy that you get to go to Pilates. And I didn't ask like, hey, can I go? I put it on the calendar and I was like, so you're watching row for 2 hours and then the nanny will be here and then you can do what you need to do. And then also having help, like having a nanny has really, really helped. She's here 5 days a week for 6 or 7 hours a day. I try and get all my work done then, so that I can be present with my daughter before and after. And then obviously I'm with her much of the night, not as much anymore because she's learning to sleep. God. But I was up every hour with her for 10 months. So yeah, I think that's been really helpful too.
That's awesome.
I love that.
So where can our listeners find you?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram at Kelli T. Moore, and our website is soulfireproductionsco.com, but my DMs are open. So if anyone has questions or wants clarification on anything, I'm totally here to help, and any resources that I can provide.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm happy that I heard more of it because I guess I just didn't get to that part. But there's so much more.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll see you next episode.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion and found it insightful and beneficial. Remember, the Golden Hour Birth Podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you. If you appreciate the content we bring you each week, consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform or sharing the show with your friends and family. Your support helps us reach more people and continue creating valuable episodes. If you have any questions, suggestions, or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us on our website, www.goldenhourbirthpodcast, or connect with us on social media. We value your feedback and want to make sure that we're delivering the content you want to hear. Before we sign off, we'd like to express our gratitude to our incredible guests who joined us today. We are honored that they trust us enough to be so open and vulnerable. We're grateful for their time and willingness to share their stories with us. If you're interested in taking the conversation further with us, join us on our Facebook group, The Golden Hour Birth Circle. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode, so be sure to tune in. Until then, stay golden and remember to take care of yourself. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. Bye!